Okay, this one here is the Battle of Ravenna. French are trying to relieve a siege of Ravenna, I believe. And in order to do so, they have to clear out this Spanish army. This one's got a number of weirdnesses about it. First of all, it's added some new units. French use a different activation system. It's similar. And we got a couple weird rules. Every one of these has some weird rules. Okay, so I guess the main piece of terrain here is this entrenchment. And the way that works is, I believe, let's see, we can take a look in the chart to see what that says as well. It's not on the map, it's in the booklet again, which is strange. There's a lot of room here. Would have been nice to have another printing of it, even if it had to be done kind of small, so that if we didn't need that. Yeah, this river is uncrossable for the purposes of battle as well. With this, it's one of the ones where if you're going to attack across it, you have to make a roll to see if you're disordered. If you move across it, you have to make a roll to see if you're disordered. You can't get positional advantage attacking across it. Sounds similar to some of the others, but this one has a further restriction. So a lot of these, or most of these that I've run across in the game so far, hey, if you charge through it, you're not allowed to charge through it. This one has something a little bit more specific, or a little bit more affecting, which is if you move through it, you're not allowed to charge that turn, which is a little different from how most of them are worded. It means that you can't send your cav across, and if you're not disordered, still launch your charge. Okay, we got the Swiss, and I keep forgetting to do them. We'll see if we get them at this point. And the French activations work as follows. When they get either a free activation or a continuity, they have choices. Now, for a free activation, they can just activate their standard, just like in the normal game. But they could also choose to activate up to 3 of their units. And you'll notice none of the leaders have a modifier on them. They don't affect it. They don't have a modifier. They don't have a continuation number. Instead, what happens is you can choose to activate however many 1 to 3 things you have. If it's a free activation, well, 1 works, but otherwise you have a chance of a large-scale force operating. This doesn't serve, you don't roll or anything to see who you activate. For a continuity, you have the same kind of situation. You can choose between 1 to 3, and you'll be adding the modifier for how many continuations you've had. But one notable thing is you only have 1. If you activate like 3 columns or 3 battles at once, that still only counts as 1 activation for that penalty, as far as I can tell. Okay. The Spanish infantry, which is these brown guys here, have the ability to entrench during the battle. If they use an activation, they can declare they're all taking a defensive posture. And just what that is isn't absolutely clear in the historical, so, Berg has some fun with this. And what that's going to do is if they're fired upon by artillery, crossbow, or arquebuses, but not longbows, and there are some longbows, makes sense actually, there's going to be a DRM of -2 on the firing. However, they can't fire shock or charge attack. They're allowed to rally. If they're attacked in shock, there's a +1 DRM against them. They will fall out of their entrenched position. If they retreat, they fall out of it. Now there's this rule about Ferrara's guns, which doesn't seem to apply to Ferrara's guns at all. Well, wait, maybe, yeah, no, it does. Ferrara is the French guy. Yeah, okay. So, the French artillery was moving during this battle, but the game rules don't really apply, don't really allow for that. So, the French artillery is going to be positioned in a fixed location, and you just have to deal with that. However, somehow or another, there's guns that were moved across the river behind the Spanish camp. And the way that's done is when you activate the artillery battery, you may activate one of the artillery units and flip it over to its limbered side, removing it from the map. The unit must be able to trace a line back to here that is free of the enemy, more or less. On the next Spanish free activation, the unit gets flipped back over to its unlimbered side, doesn't show up. And the next time the French artillery activate, you place that unit in a hex that can trace from somewhere back here. I don't know, say 4704 or something like that. Right, 4700, which is actually in the river itself. But basically, they can place somewhere back here and then start shooting the rear of the Spanish. Now, that river is uncrossable because of the Spanish forces here, but with enough French pinning those forces down, slipping one gun over maybe is possible. We're using normal flight levels. I haven't looked at my seizure counters. What are they? Unsteady troops, a seizure. When you do a seizure, you only activate one French column. Unsteady troops, battle cry, and a seizure. The interesting new unit we have is along here we have gun wagons. Now they're on top of artillery. The gun wagons are really tough to fight, especially behind the entrenchments. Nothing can stack with them except the artillery. And they have an arquebus on them. That's really about it. If they're forced to retreat, they're destroyed. But they can disorder. We have all kinds of movement rates here. The artillery movement rates don't really matter because everything's unlimbered at the beginning of the game. I don't think anything too exciting about the things. Let's just see. The trench and ramparts, those are only -1 to missile and to melee fire. And artillery does not help. Or they don't help against artillery, which is kind of interesting. Now, there's a lot of artillery in this game. French have a load of guns back here and a load of guns here. The Spanish guns are all here, which is kind of interesting. You know, you're not really going to see an artillery duel. You're going to see the Spanish trying to break the French center and the French trying to smash the wings. We have some cav on both sides. Some light stuff over here. I think there's some heavy over here. Likewise, the Spaniards have heavy here and some light there. So it's kind of matched up against each other. And, well, I guess we'll see what happens. This was not a clear victory for either side, so. Okay, so looking at the French activation table. First of all, Berg expects that this is going to open up as an artillery duel. For that to be the case, I think the French have to feel like they can't easily crack the enemy position without fire. I'm at a far enough range here that I can pop off, you know, that I can weaken the units that are defending the flank there. This is a little thicker, so that's a little less important to me. However, or a little less valuable. I am considering going with a 2-unit activation as my first fire. After that, though, continuities, I think I'm going to roll, 60% is pretty good, but 40% is starting to get a lot weaker. So unless I have really good reason to hit both, I think I'm going to do that. So All right, let's see if the French get the actual first activation. And they do. The French opened up, like I said, 2 artillery blasts. That had some effect. It retired a unit. Got rid of one of these gun wagons, actually. Retired is good enough to clear them off the field, which is cool. My continuation, I launched the Stradivariuses. Stradivari in to smack a Genitor. He got by without the lance effect and actually had a pretty good result, which is awesome. And we did some carousel type action with these guys. They have to dismount and reload though, which is so funny. And then got an additional activation, and I launched the artillery shots here again. And you can see that actually didn't have any effect, but if I could clear out this, then I can send these sword and buckler guys in to start trying to roll up the Spanish flank, which would have been very good, but that doesn't appear to have happened. Now I gotta worry about what the heck, how the Spaniards are gonna defend themselves. This looks rough for them, so I don't know. Spanish rally their standard and send a charge with the mounted cav, the mounted men-at-arms, the dismounted cav, the mounted men-at-arms, smashing into, what is it? Killed this crossbow, mounted crossbow, and did some damage against the mounted arquebusiers there. They may actually be worth more. It puts me in kind of a not great position. I was hoping to get another advance and be able to chase away some of these other forces, but I didn't get that. And now we're back over to the French. How are the French going to do things? Yeah, I don't know. You know, a 3 activation isn't very likely. The 2 puts me at some risk at not being able to get things out of the way, not being able to use the units that I want to. It would be nice to keep firing though. Could always switch back and forth because leaders don't actually matter here, except to keep things in command radius, but even that I'm not very good at. All right. This is definitely one I want to activate. What else? I'm not sure. It would be real nice to get behind those men-at-arms, but they could run away. I don't have... Infantry's not going to be able... Well, yeah, they're not disordered. Infantry's not going to be able to do damage. Do I want to throw an artillery in and risk getting no action? I don't think so. I think it's more important for me to just activate. Terribly easy for dealing with, well, really any of the fire-capable units. Sure, the mounted men-at-arms can countercharge firepower, but they still get shot at as they're coming in. And we had that retire one of the French or one of the Spanish men-at-arms here, and then the French got a continuation, which they used over here, smashing one of these swordsmen on the edge, really trying to eat away at the flanks, put enough pressure on the Spaniards that they're not going to get to activate their artillery at all. It's something that's kind of weird about this system, which is that, you know, theoretically there'd be artillery fire going on throughout all of this. How fast operations are happening on the flanks might prevent some artillery fire, but probably some will have happened. Well, the Spanish so far have not gotten an opportunity where they wanted to fire their guns. That is one of the problems when you start abstracting time away, right? They took their chances trying to activate these guys, fired up this. A little bit of disorder there, but we haven't really put out that fire. And on the other side, we've still got this risk, which meant I failed an activation here, and with all the chits out, that's fairly likely when I don't have a cancel seizure opportunity. But I just failed it. I was hoping to slip around behind. I had some thought of using this guy, which is why I started out over here, but when it came down to it, he only has one unit he could activate for any real effect. This can pull up to get closer. But these guys are the only ones I could have really used, and I could have slammed into the men-at-arms up back there from behind, and maybe done some big damage. But I saw a lot more potential using these guys. I would have been able to recover, and I thought that would be the way to put out all the fires at once. But I really did need to get these guys out of there, so it's kind of I got two things I got to do, and probably didn't choose the best choice first. And now I pay the price for that. Below a radii that these kind of weak leaders have, this guy only had a 2-hex radius, meant that I can engage at long range, but I couldn't withdraw this unit, which may be coming under some heavy fire pretty soon. And I couldn't do much here. I tried for a continuation over with the my knights, and they didn't get it. Again, nobody's spending any chits on this. It's just a matter of try to see what I can do. This could have been dangerous. I'm always so loath to spend my chits, though. And the French pay their price for taking their chances on here. Rolled a 7. It's back over to the Spaniards. How terrible is it? I don't know. We had a lot to gain by attacking on both these flanks, so it seemed appropriate to do so. I'm a little worried about my camera. It died while that battery was in it, and should have been charged enough. I'm not sure. Maybe the power died on it. But we'll see if there's a connection problem. I don't know what I'm going to do. A teeny tiny activation where these guys didn't get a continuation, where they would have activated this force. The French launched their knights and did some damage, and then, and I have not been noticing this, these pink artillery are the same as these pink. They're the same command. So every time I move these, I should have been able to fire those at will. We'll ignore that for now, but this turn they did that, and we used some of our longbowmen and shot something out. This guy recovered. Shot something out, but I think the majority of the damage was done by the men-at-arms. A total of, in those two activations, 3 of these sword and buckler units got destroyed. That throws the Spanish points up to like 20. Including the retired unit, and things are looking pretty damn bad for them at this time. You don't have to make rolls to check yet, but this flank is weakened and doesn't look good for them. This flank has collapsed because I sent my men-at-arms to try to defend this one, and my decisions not to activate those infantry have definitely cost me a lot of points. At this point, it would not be unreasonable to see the French come swarming in with their swordsmen. By the way, the Spaniards tried to do a seizure to prevent a second activation by the French. Or maybe it was the third activation. I don't remember. And it failed. And now the Spaniards rallied their flag. They're wanting to get their mounted men-at-arms into the fray as kind of the only thing that can fix the problem over here easily. Although I don't know, against longbows, what the hell. And over here, well, again, I was hoping for an activation there. The French threw their seizure and failed it, but the Spanish failed in their continuation as well. Continued to push on with their mounted men-at-arms and killed another sword and buckler unit and gets them up to 24 on the victory chart. And didn't get a continuation, so now it's back to the Spaniards, and this is probably not what I want to do. I probably need to use my infantry and try to deal with those men-at-arms before things get too out of hand. It was seeming like a blowout got turned around a little bit. The Spanish got a number 3 continuations, and by judiciously using their infantry, they were able to pretty much wreck this and the cav. Also with launching a charge here, they killed a couple of those guns, which makes this flank much, much more solid. You know, if French artillery, there's only 2 guns left. If the French artillery can't be plunking them away, plus that's the formation of guns that can go across the river. Something has to be done about that. There's a lot of retired units. It's not the kind of blow that the Spaniards suffered, where a lot of points got generated. Instead, it's really weakened the French capability, primarily with their cavalry, at least in the short term. Now, they only lost one of their mounted men-at-arms here. This light cav and missile units, you know, this stuff's probably more potent, so that may be able to fend off any kind of disaster there to these artillery, but we're not sure. All right, so the French open up with a banner, rallying their units. You get a continuation. They got 2 total. Continuation where they moved pink, shot up some units, also moved their longbows into place to get rid of that sword and buckler guy. These have all been retires, all the losses. There wasn't any kills this time. And then got another continuation and activated these culverins here, and they blew the men-at-arms into the flag as well. So we kind of solved a lot of the problems that were facing the French all at once. And in terms of points, we're doing better than the Spaniards are. So it looks pretty good for us right now. For the Spaniards, there's the possibility of using the artillery. Now, the problem with the artillery is it's its own, it can only really be done on a free activation. So the French artillery can keep plunking away, but the Spanish, they don't have a leader for it. One interesting thing I'm noticing, high number of leaders for the French, but low radius on them, which is kind of troublesome. So, you know, I mean, that's what got me in trouble here. Of course, that's about the same size as the Spanish heavy cav. And then these guys, there were a lot of units, but with a low range, he wasn't able to do all the things he wanted to. And that's why he's got a couple of units coming out of there and some dead units, because the radius of his leaders wasn't very good. This guy, for example, has a 5 radius, much, much better. Could have actually sent one of these. It wouldn't get there automatically, but I could have sent it on its happy way. But getting rid of that cav unit was more important at this point. The Spaniards chose to rally their flag instead. The thinking being, look, if I fire these cannon, maybe I can kill a couple units at best. But how likely is that? Well, these guys are out at range 3, pretty much on the -2 table. The organ gun was the one gun that was destroyed. So at -2, it's very easy to disorganize them, but I'm probably not going to eliminate units, which means I'll probably just retire or retreat them and only get a point or whatever. If things kind of start freezing and it just becomes an artillery duel, fine, then I'll trade shots and try to kill off French units. But as of right now, I'm still a little worried that the French have created enough disruption that I need to get my units rallied into place. Grabbing some cheap points, I'm going to lose that fight in the long run anyway, which may just be I've lost the game, you know. Of course, I could lie down. That would help. Now, with the French artillery located on the wings, it's kind of vulnerable to sorties. We've taken out the rest of the culverins over here. We feel pretty secure. Over here, there's still a bunch, but we're chopping into them and also trying to hit the longbowmen. Now, those could withdraw before combat, but I didn't do that because they get disordered anyway. It doesn't really seem like there's too much advantage, except I guess avoiding an engaged result, to withdrawing before combat. You pretty much hand the combat over. And especially with this guy who was disordered attacking, there was some chance that I didn't get disordered, which indeed happened. Now, if I want to withdraw from that situation, I get disordered, which is just as painful, so I don't know. Had a couple of continuations. They opened up over here, trying to shoot this. That didn't work. Then I recovered these guys, and then finally I whacked those knights, but just back to retired. It gets the points back up to 26. It is starting to allow me to shift my line around for a bit of an outflank there. I don't have to worry. The center is not going to come charging out. Those gun wagons, they're just a fixed location there. They're not going anywhere, and nothing can go through them. So the only thing that can happen sort of here is that the Spanish can fire at me. So I really don't have to worry too much about how thin the line's getting there. I actually probably should have shifted it another hex. Let's do that. Let's leave the hull more in the center. And I don't know, I still haven't activated these. I probably should have done these instead, but those mounted, those knights were kind of scary, and I was hoping to get something over here and begin chasing the units that are on that flank away so that I can sort of try to complete an outflank over there. But of Melanus, the Spaniards doing a rallying and failing their continuation. The French essentially just blowing a hole, killing another one of those sword and bucklers. That gets the Spaniards almost up to where they have to start checking. So they're on the verge of losing the battle, basically. In which case, maybe it's time, I don't know. I was going to say to start pounding them, but I've been pounding them. I tried to get a continuation for the French here to try to swamp these. You know, killing another one of those SBs, I could pretty much say, yep, I can just sit here and wait until you give up and leave. And that would be good enough. Let's see, what do the Spaniards do? They launched, basically put their positioning back for a defensive line, so those guys can't just come in and cross the barrier. But they also launched an attack here, which I'm kind of questioning, against these bowmen who can now withdraw. And then I rallied these guys who are kind of questionable, but I don't know. I'm not too excited about getting my mounted men-at-arms going, and then failed in an attempt to get these guys moving forward, take out the last of those cannons, and then fall back was sort of my hope. But, you know, that would have been risky too, because I'm sending a lot of guys into the mouth of the cannons. They get chewed up a little bit. They kill the cannons, but then they get swamped, and we don't have the points to spare for it. So probably a dumb plan, but I'm good at dumb plans. And putting that unit up there was definitely a bad idea. I was able to get some longbows into place, shoot it up enough, got a lucky good shot, and a lucky good shot on the second shot over here. I've killed 2 SBs. Anything but a 0 will end this. If there is a 0, the French get to roll for continuation, but because remember, this happens at the end of the free activation, which really confuses me. I almost always want to do it in between. Oh, I hope I haven't attacked with pikemen. Yeah, I did, but not Swiss pike. I don't know if there are Swiss in this. All right, and that's game over. The French win this one. I don't know. I mean, obviously, I feel like I could have been a lot more clever, but I feel that way on both sides. It's always how I feel in a game. And I think the Spaniards have a tough job here, because they're outgunned. If it turns just into an artillery duel, they're going to lose units at a quicker pace. They have a lower victory total, a lower penalty where they lose the game. And the French guns are located on the flanks, which had its problems the way we saw things develop, because the Spaniards were able to knock out some of the guns. But the advantage of it on the flanks is that I can knock out the units and then get an outflanking attack that can land as I weaken that portion of the field. These gun wagons, they pretty much guarantee that the French center is inviolate. So I can do crazy stuff. I could have, separated units out of there and everything. I think overall this doesn't work out very well because of that. If the gun wagons could have been moved through more easily, then that would have served as somewhat of a mitigation. But overall, this looked like a really tough one for the Spaniards to win. I know it was called even, but I don't see it. But who knows? I may have misplayed the Spaniards worse than I misplayed the French. Let's send this one up. It's Ravenna.